All right, we'd like to welcome everybody out to the Southeast Region RAC. I'll read this opening statement and then we'll introduce everybody. So this meeting is being held in person in Green River and is also being streamed live on YouTube. This public forum allows you to express your opinions and ideas on wildlife management in our state. This RAC considers your feedback on the proposals before us today and reports them to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is in charge with setting wildlife policy for our state. We all have ideas and opinions about what is best for Utah's wildlife. That's why we're here today. We encourage those who want to express their opinion to fill out a comment card. Comments at today's meeting should be focused on topics listed on the agenda. Unrelated comments will not be heard today and should be sent directly to DWR or RAC and board members for consideration another time. So if you want to comment, there's cards back on the table and bring them up to TJ here. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that do not align with their own. Respectful behavior facilitates efficient meetings where RAC members can listen, digest, and address the concerns, ideas, and proposals being presented. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated, and those who engage in it will be asked to leave. Lastly, please help reduce distractions during the meeting by putting your phone on silent, and if you need to take a call, we ask that you step outside. We'll go around the table and introduce our RAC members that are here today, starting with Trish.
Trish Hadeen, elected official.
Charles Fisher, sportsman.
Cash Stallings, public at large.
Tyler Gilson, public at large.
Daniel Luke, Forest Service.
Brad Richmond, non-consumptive.
We have two of our RAC members that have joined us online today, so I'll start with Jake.
Jake Palma, BLM. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had to coach some baseball this evening. So.
And then we have Justin Ivins. Is your mic working, Justin? Well, while Justin looks for his mute button, we'll introduce the rest of us. So I'm Scoop Flannery, representing Sportsman.
And then I'm TJ Cook. I'm filling in for Chris Wood tonight.
And then we'd also like to recognize a couple of our Wildlife Board members who have joined us. We have Bob Christensen and Gary Nilsson, I believe, are the only ones so far. Is your mic working yet, Justin? When it does, you just let us know. You just chime in whenever. I guess we'll move to the agenda item number 2, which is the approval of agenda and minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes and the consent agenda.
Yeah, I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Those online?
Yes.
All right. We'll go ahead and say that it approves unanimously. We'll move on to a regional update by TJ.
Perfect. Let me share my screen real quick. And we'll get that pulled up. So I shouldn't start on that slide. Here we go. We'll get there. Perfect. So I'll give the regional update real quick. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out to the RAC meeting tonight. First, our aquatic section's been busy. They recently released 5,000 bony-tailed chub fry into the Matheson Wetland Preserve. They also did some netting there at Schofield. That was completed recently. The habitat section's also been busy, doing a bunch of different things. The Sago Trailhead is open and we have filled that drinker. Make sure you get the permits that are needed from the tribe before you access through there. They are issuing those permits, but I'm being told it takes a couple of weeks to get that, or it may take a couple of weeks to get that in place. So plan ahead as you're visiting the Sago Trailhead. We're also partnering with UDOT on the Highway 191 and 491 project just there outside of Monticello, looking at doing some wildlife fencing. We also recently had some range trend updates on several of the different units that we share with the Northeastern region. So we had range trend come to our region last year and they read all of our transects. That's on a 5-year rotation. Law enforcement's been busy. Officers are busy with the bear hunts and fishing's picking up as things warm up. Outreach has a native fish viewing event on the Santa Fe on June 27th. And then the state is actually getting a new logo. So this will be phased out in the next couple of years. So you should start seeing it show up as that's rolled out. Wildlife's doing some bird surveys as well as some bird banding on the Matheson Preserve. They've been attending a lot of trainings this spring, getting geared up for a busy summer season. They have to do all their drug training and firearms training and everything annually. They're also continuing picking up callers. And then the neonate study on the LaSalle's is ongoing this year as well. So they're expecting fawns to start hitting the ground pretty much any time now. So they're excited for that and looking forward to a busy season there. And then just want to highlight everyone in the region that helped out with the mule deer meetings that we had last week. We held a meeting both in Price and in Monticello and had a huge turnout. We had our federal partners there. We had state partners there, some NGO representatives. We had RAC members that attended, thank you, and we had the public that attended. So those are some exciting meetings. That's the third one that we've had so far, and we're trying to get the word out, and we should see another one of those next August. So we'll make sure we get that out to everybody and propose with plenty of lead time and get it out to the RAC as well. You guys are always welcome to those things, and we can get some more good things going for mule deer in the state of Utah. So thank you.
All right, thank you, TJ. Let's go. I skipped the wildlife board meeting update, so we'll go to that right now. So yeah, bear with me here. So first item on the agenda was regarding the deer permit recommendations. And there was a motion to look at reclassifying the Oak Creek unit into a premium unit during the mid-plan review, and that passed unanimously. And then there was a motion to approve the rest of the permit recommendations as presented, and that also passed unanimously. Regarding the once-in-a-lifetime permit recommendations, there was a motion to accept the once-in-a-lifetime permit recommendations as presented by the division, with the addition of an archery bison permit on the Book Cliffs Little Creek and Book Cliffs Bitter Creek archery hunts. And that passed 4-2. Excuse me. And then for the bull elk permit recommendations, there's a motion to accept the bull elk permit recommendations as presented, and that passed unanimously. For pronghorn permit recommendations, they were passed unanimously as presented. For the antlerless permit recommendations, there was a few motions here. One, to reduce the Morgan unit from 8 to 5 permits, allowing 3 any legal weapon and 2 archery, and that passed 5-1. There was a motion to increase the antlerless elk permits on the Monroe unit from 40 to 60, and that passed unanimously. There was a motion to allow non-residents to apply for antlerless moose permit on the Morgan South Rich unit, and that passed unanimously. For the CWMU antlerless permit recommendations, there was a motion to accept the 2026 CWMU analyst recommendations as presented by the division, with the exception of Deseret antlerless moose being reduced by 1 public and 1 private permit. And that passed 4 in favor with 2 recusals. And then there was a motion to accept the aquatic rule amendments for, as presented, which passed unanimously. So we'll move now to the first action item on the agenda, and we'll invite Heather Talley to come up. And Heather, if you have any clarifications or anything from your presentation that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it.
I think we're good for the upland game unless anybody has any questions for me.
I do have a question on the upland game. Nothing to do with the changes here, but it is about sage grouse and the season's dates we have for sage grouse. I've had some people with some concerns about sage grouse hunting them that early, that they're still full of pin feathers. They're only allowed 2 birds and have to put in for multiple years. And I was wondering if there's any negative effects to move that season later in the date in the year. So if you harvest a sage grouse, if you wanted to get that sage grouse mounted, you could do that.
That's an interesting conversation because we have actually moved the date back significantly from where it used to be decades ago due to the lack of brood breakup. And so what we're trying to do with the current season dates is find the best spot for it to exist where brood breakup has already occurred. But once you move later and later into the winter, then you have more opportunity to have additive effects on the population. So that's why we have the season dates the way that they are, to give the birds that would have lived through the winter have that opportunity and will contribute to the next breeding season, but still allowing for brood breakup to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the RAC? Do we have any questions from the audience? Any online comments? Okay, comments from the RAC. Any guys online got anything to say? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the division's recommendations.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. We'll take a hand tally, I guess, from those who are in attendance. So all in favor, raise your hand. Okay. And then Jake
Yes.
and Justin, if you're on and can hear us. So, okay. Motion passes unanimously 7-0. Next item, still with Heather. So wild turkey recommendations. And any clarification you'd like to add?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We would like to add the clarification that if depredation or the control permit vouchers were to be able to be sold, they would be given out to the landowners based on a sex ratio of what's being seen in the field. So the way that that works is the depredation specialist will go out and count how many offending animals are in the field. And then most of those animals that we would be targeting, because it's a management hunt, would be hens. And so we would give mostly beardless permits. And that, again, the season dates for that is August 1st through March 14th. And so that would not affect the spring limited entry season.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Do we have any questions for Heather from the RAC?
I guess I got another question on season dates for wild turkey. Down south here, we see a lot of wild turkeys when the general season hits, henned up by the time the season hits. Has there been any discussion about maybe splitting the state and splitting that general hunt into 2 separate season structures? Hunting turkeys down on the San Juan River is much different than hunting turkeys in Snowville. They're just going to come into season at different times, kind of break that up and give equal chances to where you are in the state.
We have heard this in the past, especially concerning the Merriam subspecies. And the concern that we have is we don't have a lot of Utah data to calculate peak breeding season and peak nesting initiation, peak hatch dates. We're actually working on that right now. NWTF has purchased a bunch of transmitters. We have them out in the landscape. We're trying to figure out what that peak hatch date is to back calculate to see when our peak breeding dates are for turkeys, because we have to have 60 to 70% of that breeding to occur before the limited entry season starts, or we will run into major population crashes. And on that note, it's just for the information of people here also, if we actually harvest more than 30% of males during the spring season, that can also lead to deleterious impacts to the population, and because they'll just be quiet and not breed, and then we won't have recruitment. So moving the season date earlier is something that we would like to suss out in that study, but we would definitely want to make sure that we're being responsible before we do that with data.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And then I guess just learning about that study now, when did that study start and when do we think we can start seeing results from it?
We started putting out transmitters a couple of years ago, and it's not finalized yet. It will go into implementation officially this coming next May.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the RAC? Do we have any questions from the audience?
No questions, just comments.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move to those comments, and let's first bring up Troy Justinson, SFW.
Troy Justinson, Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife. We support the division's recommendations. We're comfortable with what they've done. We appreciate Heather's time she's put into this, and thank you.
Thanks, Troy. And then Chuck Carpenter from the National Wild Turkey Foundation.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for the chance to speak. Thank you for your dedication. So I'm Chuck Carpenter. I represent the National Wild Turkey Federation. I'm a biologist. We support all the changes except for the proposed changes to commodify the vouchers, the R657-69-7. Right now, we did implement turkeys under the conservation easement rule. That hasn't gone in effect, so we don't know how that will pan out, but that gives landowners some compensation for turkey damages. We're also increasing those control permits from 2 to 5, which landowners that surveyed last year said that they wanted. And those permits are either sex, and they've historically been they've actually been used at about 50% tom harvest. So we're going to see a little bit more increase in toms based off of that increase, but they wanted those extra control permits. We still need to evaluate how that shakes out. We're also adding them to the urban turkey rule. So hopefully that gives some municipalities some way to trap and translocate without putting burden on the division. The voucher program is great. Heather and the division done a great job setting it up. We just think right now the commodification of those turkeys will actually reduce hunter opportunity. Right now, about 1/3 of the landowners that are involved in the voucher program do let people take over-the-counter tags and come hunt on their property. We've seen that like with antelope when they got commodified. Essentially all that went out the window, and it's just a pay-to-play model, and kind of no more 16-year-olds knocking on doors getting able to hunt. So with all the different changes happening, the 3 different changes happening that should help out landowners, we think we should wait, see how that pans out, evaluate the effects, see if that solves the problem before we go to that next step and commodify wildlife. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chuck. TJ, you want to summarize online comments?
No.
None on this one? Okay. Okay, we'll move to comment from the RAC, comment and discussion.
Well, to me, it sounds like the 657-69-7. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but if the Wild Turkey Foundation or Federation, I'm not sure which one. But if they're against that, I think I would be comfortable taking that out. I mean, wildlife belongs to all of us, so making it the ability to sell that seems like you're commodifying that resource more.
I'd be in support with Charles. I think there's enough changes that are happening. I'd like to see if that helps resolve the issue before we need to sell them and then, make it all about the prize instead of resolving a depredation issue.
Anybody else have something to say? Yeah, I kind of had some of those concerns, but then seeing that it's outside of the normal hunting time frame when the 16-year-old would come knocking on the door, kind of made me rethink that a little bit. No, if there's no other comments or discussion, any of you guys online, I don't want to overlook you if you're trying to say something, but if there's no other comments or discussion, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal, all the proposal other than R657-69-7.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's take an individual tally on this one, starting with Trish.
Aye.
Okay. Charles?
Yes.
Okay. Cash?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And Jake?
Yes.
And Justin, we'll give you a chance if you're on. All right. I see we have Stephanie Ivins on there, and that's his wife, so I think that he's trying other methods, but okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, on to CWMUs with public land variance requests with Darren. Yeah, Darren, go ahead if you have any clarifications. or anything
Yeah,
like that.
I do have one. And as soon as this map comes up, I can refer to it. So, but I'll go ahead. There's one map in your packet that is not right. When we discussed all of these with the CWU Advisory Committee, the map was correct in the conversation. So if you watch that, you got the information that you needed. But I just wanted to show you on the Green Canyon CWMU, the map you got appears to include on the north end of the CWMU 2 pretty big chunks of Forest Service ground, and that's incorrect. That the boundary should go around that. And yeah, we may not. Maybe I'll try it one more time. The only public land that would be included in the CWMU would be a landlocked 40-acre piece that's within the boundary. Let me just stop sharing and then try it one more time. And if not, I'll walk around and show you my computer. I don't know what to do. All right, hold on. Here we go. Oh, I got kicked off. Anyway, if you have more questions about that, I'll try and dig it back up. That's the only point of clarification. I guess the only other thing I'd add is that, these, we did review these. I apologize for the great amount of homework that I gave you. If you sat through that whole meeting, but hopefully you were able to scroll the ones that you're interested in. So I'd be happy to take questions.
I got a question on this Green Canyon one now that you're talking about it.
Okay.
Looking at this map, I see the lands that aren't included, that were included in the map, but I also, in that northeastern section of northwestern section of the map, I see some Green Canyon trade lands
Yeah.
that aren't labeled as trade lands. And then I see some trade lands that look like they're Forest Service land.
Shouldn't be. Yeah, that's probably because the map is weird. Let me see if I can share it one more time. All right, here we go. So you're talking about northwestern corner. Yeah, so that's all the I see why it's confusing. So the legend is, it looks like it's forced. It's not. It's got hash marks through it. So yeah, I see what you're saying. It does look like it's forced. It's not. It's private. That little corner, that little piece that sticks up on the.
Yeah, and then just north of that, on
Northeast.
your map isn't showing it, but on our map, there's a piece of private that's just labeled Green Canyon Trade Lands.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the correct map. That's what I wanted to clarify. That's obviously why it was confusing. So you can see those two big pieces of forest. Those are not included in the boundary. There's that 1 40-acre piece on the south end. That'd be the only public land included. They're going to continue to keep those trade lands north of the Blacksmith Fork Canyon Road as trade lands. They used to give an extra buck permit to include that forest ground that they're taking out, and so they'll take that back for the private tag.
Okay, well, and I get that this is probably boring, but I just want to
No,
know.
it's fine.
So what is labeled as Green Canyon Trade Lands on our map, that section just north of the trade lands on your map, that private says Green Canyon Trade Lands, that is not trade lands then?
All that orange stuff north of the road is trade lands.
Yeah, and I'm
on
talking
this
about
map.
the private piece just north of that orange. On
Correct, yeah.
Our map,
You're
it
right.
says Green Canyon.
Yeah,
Trade
this is the
Lands.
correct map. So
Okay.
this is what we're voting on.
Okay.
So I got a question. I did get a chance to ask this to one of our biologists, but I just want to make sure we get out there. So in the very long CWMU advisory committee meeting, when we were talking about the Roan Cliffs, there was some discussion whether that operator was going to change their boundaries to include or not include some private ground. Typically they have included it, and then they gave the trade lands. But during that advisory committee, it was still up in the air what he was going to choose to do. Do we have that resolved?
know.
What his choice was?
Dustin, do you know the answer to that question? Do you need a map for that? No. Okay.
Yeah, I was talking to Brad about this and it sounds like he was gonna leave them out. Yeah.
So leave him out, and then subsequently, then he doesn't need to put up the trade lands
Right.
this season either. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Dustin.
Are there other questions from the RAC? All right, do we have any questions from the audience? All right, online comments?
No comments on this one.
Okay, do we have comments from the audience? None? Okay. If anybody wanted to comment on this, raise your hand. We'll go back to the RAC for comments and discussion.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Jake. You got your hand raised.
Yeah, I guess it's not really necessarily about the specific thing we're voting on, but just kind of a heads up for adding public lands to CWMU that didn't have public lands in the past, at least for BLM. If a hunting guide is being used on that CWMU that would potentially be on public land, at least for BLM, there's a possibility that a special recreation permit would be needed on the BLM lands. And so that's kind of a case-by-case basis, and we'd have to look at that. So just kind of for awareness for folks with the CWMUs.
And just along those lines, just FYI, that's something we do emphasize. You know, if they include public land, they need to ensure they have all the proper permitting if they're going to guide on that ground. So we were working on trying to get a checkbox on the application as well, so they acknowledge when they apply that they need to have those. So we'll keep working towards making sure that's clear to everybody.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jake.
So I have a couple comments. I just want to say that I really appreciate the CWMU Advisory Committee and the role that they fulfill. If you did go and watch the meeting, it was a long meeting. A lot of questions get asked. These CWMUs that have public land in them, They are vetted every time they come up on a core. And I appreciate the efforts that take place there. And I think that committee serves a very important role when it comes to the CWMU program. And so with that, I do have some concerns though about the proposed rule amendments. You know, sitting on the committee that we did the rule changes a couple years ago, we spent more time talking about how to kill elk on over objective units than we spent talking about anything else, which is probably blows your mind when you think about CWMUs and everything they do or don't do, that we spent time talking about killing elk. But I kid you not when I say we spent more time talking about how to kill elk than any other aspect of the CWMU program. Like, take everything else combined, we still spent more time talking about how to kill elk. And so from that, there were some of these rule suggestions that came out about how are we going to do that? How are we going to keep people accountable? Because if you can imagine, the public's biggest interest in the CWMU program are antlerless permits. That's what we're given the most of. And so trying to defend what we do with antlerless permits was really important. And so there was always this debate of who gets to kill these cows, the CWMU or the public. And everyone had a different opinion on that. And maybe the overall feeling was it doesn't matter, they just need to be killed. Because when we get a bad winter, them and the deer fight for what's left and the deer lose. So we just need to kill elk. So some safety guards were put in place about what we should and shouldn't do to protect the public's interest and make sure that the unit is operating in the way that it's intended, which is a cooperative wildlife management unit. So the division is working together with these private landowners to achieve unit-wide objectives. That's the intent. And the CWMUs get a lot of perks for that, including getting to set some of their own objectives on buck to doe ratios and how many animals are on their landscape. And you can have a CWMU on a general season unit and it can really be a trophy hunt because they get to do that. But this rule is basically suggesting that the CWMU operator no longer needs to show up and be accountable for what role are they playing in getting cows killed on over objective units. And I'm uncomfortable with that for a lot of reasons. But basically, if you're a CWMU on an over objective unit for elk, you get certain perks and opportunities that other CWMUs wouldn't, including you can offer to anyone who comes and hunts on your property, whether it be public or private, you can offer them a 2-cow permit because we just want to kill elk. So if you're here hunting, don't just kill 1 cow, kill 2. Let's do it. And already something that's super frustrating to me is we're already seeing that abused. So Deseret this year, who exercises the 2-cow permit, has come forward and said, hey, the amount of elk that are on our land for what we want to accomplish for our hunts, it's at the population we want. So we know we're on an over objective unit overall, but we're happy with where we're at. So we're going to reduce the number of public tags that we have because we don't need to kill as many elk. But in the same breath, we're going to still continue to utilize a 2-cow permit. So the only thing that's happened here is we have reduced the number of public hunters that come across the land because we know we can get the harvest we need with a 2-cow permit. That's all that's happened here. And this proposal is just one more step at that. I get really uncomfortable, and this is just one guy's opinion, I get really uncomfortable when the division talks like they represent the CWMUs. You do not. You represent the public and our interest in the resource. The CWMUs get to represent themselves. And they should have to come to the CWMU Advisory Committee and represent themselves. They should have to come forward and say, this is what we're doing, this is what's working, this is what's not working. We're working with the division, and let the division speak for the things that they're doing and let that CWMU speak for the things that they're doing. But don't relieve them of the responsibility to show up to a committee and say, what are you doing to kill elk? And are you living within the bounds of the rules? And is the public's interest protected? So basically, it's an accountability tool. That's all that it is. It's an accountability tool. And I don't think that the CWMU should be relieved of that. And it goes both ways. If the CWMU is unhappy with how they're being treated by a biologist or the division or their public hunters, they should get to come to that committee and say, what is being pushed upon us is unfair. And if you relieve them of that responsibility, they don't get the opportunity to voice their opinion either. So I'm very uncomfortable with the rule amendment change. And I think a lot of effort went into saying that it is what it is. And I do not think that it has been operating long enough. I understand that us ever getting to within our elk objective on some of these units is probably pie in the sky, a pipe dream wish. But the CWMU still needs to show up and say, what are they doing to help us achieve our objectives? And if our objectives need to change, that's a different conversation. Let's change them. So, Mr. Chair, that's my 2 cents. I don't think I can support everything else in this recommendation, but the rule change.
That was only 2 cents, Cash?
Yeah.
No, we appreciate your insight on that. You're very knowledgeable and very dedicated to it. Any other comments or discussion from the RAC? If not, but do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. See if I can get a second. I move that we accept the division's recommendation as proposed, except for the rule change.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Yeah, if not, we'll go to a vote. We'll do individual votes again. We'll start with Trish.
Yes.
And Charles?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
And Justin?
Yes.
How about that? We got Justin. All right.
You heard me?
Yeah. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to the next item. We got Chad Wilson. He's going to talk about R 657-24, compensation for mountain lion, bear, wolf, or eagle damage. And if there's anything you'd like to add clarification wise.
No, it was a pretty short presentation. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
I got a question on this, reading through the RAC packet here. I mean, everything pretty much aligns for livestock, and I might be out of the norm here, but at one time, my wife, girlfriend at the time, we were out looking for sheds and her dog was picked up by a golden eagle and taken off. Is there, it was just like a little, but we're compensation for livestock. These animals, wildlife obviously affects other things. Is there any compensation for other losses due to wildlife, or are we just talking livestock here?
Just livestock. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Any other questions? Do we have any? We have no questions from the audience. Okay. Any comments from the audience? We do have one comment from Brandon Payne.
I just kind of, I didn't come here for this agenda item, but I had a thought on the way down here. I haven't paid attention to it. I do coyote control for a big sheep producer east of here. They have addressed the concern that in the past, so right now, Corey Viteri, who was a state trapper, retired. They didn't replace him. Isaac Hardy, who was Emory County, they didn't replace him. They've got a trapper out of Birdseye covering part of Corey's district here in Grand County. They've got him also covering part of Isaac's district in Emory County. They've addressed or expressed to me a frustration, a concern that in the past, they had a trapper on the ground to verify eagle kills, verify, coyote, bobcat, lion kills. because of the trappers being spread so thin, that's a concern of theirs. I don't know, like I said, I haven't followed this process. I don't know if that's even relevant in the discussion. I just had that thought on the way down here. If it helps, great. If not, just brush it off.
No, appreciate your comment. Any online comments? Okay, we'll move to comments and discussion from the RAC.
I think what he's saying is sort of what they're trying to address, is it not? Aren't they gonna develop a team as opposed to just have government trappers respond to these?
Yeah, so this recommendation is make it so we can authorize other people to do proof of loss forms. So this would give the producer or their agents the ability to document the proof of loss. They're the first ones there. Yeah, so a lot of this was taking into consideration the time that it takes for trappers to get there. So yeah, with the technology we have these days, I think it'll be a good change.
If you want to step up to the mic.
There was talk after the divorce between Wildlife Services and Department of Ag of hiring a state wolf specialist. Do you know if that's progressed at all?
That would be through the Department of Ag.
Okay, well, I didn't know if it had come
Well,
up in
no.
your talk.
I haven't heard of that, but I
of
guess that was a
addressing
question back
wolf
to you.
loss, wolf loss issues. I was just curious if that come up.
No, it hasn't. Wolf and eagles are federal, so we can pay up to half on eagles.
Other comments from the RAC? All right. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the division's proposal.
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a motion from Brad and a second by Daniel. Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll take a vote. If you guys here just want to raise your hand, all in favor? And those online will go to Jake first
Yes.
and Stephanie. I'm reading the screen. Justin.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to number 9. And before we get to this number 9, we just want to remind everybody in the audience, I think this is a pretty passionate topic. If you're here to make a comment and you're representing yourself, you have 3 minutes. We're really excited to hear from everybody and happy that everybody showed up. If you're representing a group, you'll have 5 minutes to make your comment. Yeah, Chad. So this is R657-11, or sorry, yes, -11, taking fur bearers and trapping. And Chad, if there's anything you'd like to clarify before we move on.
Yeah, I'd just like to take the time to let you know how we got to this recommendation. So this actually started the years prior to House Bill 469. That's the House bill that made it so if you had a combination or a hunting license that you could hunt or trap cougars year round. The years leading up to that, the division would make recommendations for additional cougar harvest, and it just didn't feel like it was happening to the degree that it needed to. Led to a lot of frustration from a lot of people. Ultimately, that frustration led up to the legislature feeling like they needed to pass 469, and so they did that. At that time, when that rolled out, we got a lot of feedback from a lot of different people asking that we don't allow all trapping methods. And specifically, there was concerns about lethal trapping. The Wildlife Board at that time passed and allowed all methods to be used. And the division committed that we would look at the methods over a 3-year period. And if we saw anything that said we could make some modifications, that we would come back through this process and recommend those modifications. And that's why we're here today. Is we looked at that data. We fulfilled our commitment end of looking at that. What we saw was that there's 7, on average, 7 cougars a year that are sport harvest with snares or with lethal sets. And there's a risk with snares up on the landscape or lethal sets on the landscape. There is a risk to other user groups. Combining all those things, we decided to make the recommendation to make it so there's no lethal sets targeting cougars on public land. Yeah, and it is something that has come up in the other RACs of whether we had a committee or not. We make committees a lot of times. Committees are great in a lot of purposes. Usually those are management plans and things that are really in depth. On this one, we felt like we saw that, we saw what was there, and made a decision. And then we did notify a lot of our partners that this is the direction that we're going to go. There wasn't consensus and agreement on all those conversations. You'll probably hear that tonight. But yeah, we feel like that this is a way to alleviate some concerns from people, and it won't really affect our amount of cougars that we harvest. And I would say too, like, just if it helps alleviate some concerns, is that we're not looking to make any further recommendations on trapping of cougars or any other species for that matter. So like this is what we felt like the data showed that we could do.
Okay, thanks, Chad. Do we have questions from the RAC?
So Chad, no lethal sets on public lands, but if just from watching the video, but ranchers or producers can still use traps on their allotments, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So on public lands?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be for sport harvest, I guess, is the best way to differentiate it.
So, I mean, I just heard you go through your proverbial why, and I heard what I took out of it is low harvest of cougars using lethal sets, but still a danger to other user groups. So you took the data that said low harvest and you said, because there's low harvest, we can get rid of lethal sets because there's a danger to other user groups because of the lethal sets. But those lethal sets are still on public grounds being used for bobcats, coyotes, beaver, whatever other fur bearer. So I guess I don't understand the why. How did you come up with only cougars matter for this if there is a danger to other user groups?
I think partly what we saw was prior to 2023, you couldn't trap cougars. And then that first year, I think we had 9 hounds caught that first year, and we've had 11 over the last 3 years. So there has been some hounds caught in that specifically. We've had, like, there still is a risk, right? I think houndsmen would recognize that and tell you that they know that there's a risk. But there was potentially additional snares out there after it was allowed.
So Chad, oh, by the way, I thought you switched over to this one so you wouldn't have to tackle.
No, it just follows me around. So if you have any problems in or a place you need problems, just hire me and I'll make sure they follow me.
So I think you answered one of the questions I had. So am I to understand then, as you know, as you're collecting this data, that the division has received 11 reports of hounds being trapped in snares? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. Was the division or anyone able to verify if those sets were being set for cougar and not for bobcat or coyote?
It would be a good question for the houndsman. They're the one that told me that it was 11, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for me, correlation, correlation isn't always causation, right? So I'm just trying to weed out here if coming to this point here that is it just for cougars or are all of our sets a problem for our houndsmen? So that was all I'm trying to get at with that.
Do you think the mild winters the last 2 years had an effect on it where trappers were able to access maybe country they didn't normally go to, where houndsmen spend a little more time snowmobiling in, even public being able to access some of this country that they wouldn't normally in a more
Yeah.
severe winter?
Yeah, I'd say, the weather always plays, it feels like the biggest factor in everything that we do. We also see fairly low cougar harvest in general. So I think, houndsmen like snow. There wasn't a lot of snow, so they might have not even ran as many dogs. So yeah.
The number of harvested lions over it's trended downward the last few years. Do we have an estimate of lions populations? Are they trending upward, downward? We just don't really know.
No, population estimate is really hard. Like that's
right.
a tricky one. But what we do is we do look at the trend, and we feel like we have a pretty good grasp on the trend, and do feel like lion populations are trending down, probably back to about where we were at in 2004-ish. So.
Are we catching an abnormal amount of females and kittens in snares?
I haven't had a report on a lot of kittens. And really with the snares, it's 7 a year. So it's,
right.
It's not a lot. Like, so when I haven't looked at those, haven't broken those out by sex on the snares, but.
And a lion snare would still require a breakaway per Utah law. Would a big tom get out of that? Or a big female?
I would hope not. Like it shouldn't. I mean, you should be able to set a cougar snare to catch a cougar, right?
And I guess my last question is, how do you know the intent of the trapper by the snare hanging in the bush?
Yeah. There's a few different things, like the cougar will be a little bit higher, so you set it up a little bit higher. I would say one of the other methods that we would use is if you catch 4 cougars and no coyotes or bobcats or anything else, then you're probably targeting cougars.
So would a law enforcement officer be able to make that call to be able to say, hey, this one's targeting a lion and versus maybe a bobcat? They'd be probably set in a similar area or geographic location.
Yeah, I think they'd be able to make that determination.
So Tyler, it led me to another question. With such low cougar harvest with lethal sets, since all cougars have to be brought in within 48 hours, is there a certain trapper that's trapping a large number of these 7 cougars with lethal sets? Or is this just a one-off here and there? I mean, that's how I imagine it, is a one-off in what would otherwise be coyote or bobcat sets. To me, it seems like if there was a problem here and it was from an individual who had found a good way to set a lethal set to catch more cougars, and I don't even know why that would be a problem because the legislature wants them all gone, but ending that set style instead of all lethal sets seems like a better option to me.
Do you
Yes,
think that
so-
is correct? That's what you're going to say.
Yeah, do you think that's correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and there was a question at the beginning, but yeah, I think that happened to me last night too. I was like, I know there was a question at the beginning, but I lost track of it. But yeah, it is spread out. That was the question. I think we're not seeing it directly from just one individual.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead,
of the
Daniel.
11 cases that they said that they caught hounds, were those lethal?
Like, did it kill the hounds?
Yes,
I believe so.
in all 11?
I'm not 100% sure, so I probably shouldn't speculate on that.
I have a question for you, Chad. So you say from 2023, that's when you started having these reports of hounds being caught in snares. Prior to 2023, was there any reason a houndsman would report a hound that was caught in a snare?
I would think you'd report it. Those are pretty valuable dogs. So like if you're, but I don't know. I guess once again, that's probably a
But to
question
what end
for-
would there be like, would they get in trouble to get the trapper in trouble? Like what would be the reason to report it?
just to bring awareness, and that is something that's happening. And I would, and whether that reported to us directly or to the Houndsman Association, I would think that they would have those conversations of saying, hey, like this happened, watch out for it, at least, you know, at least make other houndsmen aware. But the more I talk about this, the more I'm like, it probably is a better question for the Houndsman Association than me. Because and I haven't been in this position of just a year, so this was before my time, but I don't think that they were reporting that directly to us.
And since 2023, it'd probably be more likely that you would get reported, right? Because there's been a concern amongst the houndsmen that could happen.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Does anybody else from the RAC have questions? If not, do we have questions from the audience? Let's start here and then state your name.
Brandon Payne. I don't want you to think I'm picking on you. I'm not a lawyer by any means.
Just get in line.
I've watched all of these RAC meetings and I'm hoping to clarify much stuff through this process. One of the side squirrel holes, whatever this has gone down, was the non-selectivity of snares. I'm a trapper. I agree. They're non-selective. You kind of alluded to the fact you don't have any data to say, you know, it's still illegal for us to kill a female accompanied with kittens and kittens with spots. Do you have any information as far as has that been a problem since HB 469?
No, I don't know if like those being snared are females with kittens or not. I don't have that data.
Okay. Just in general, do you have an idea prior to HB 469, incidental catches and coyote snares or whatever? Do you have any idea then?
I don't, but the guy that was here before me is here. Do you have any idea, Derek? I try not to punt too many to him, but since he switched me positions, I'm gonna make him answer some of these.
I'm gonna call him out a little later anyway. So
Just when you think you're out, they drag you. Yeah, occasionally we do, you know, 3 or 4 times a year, it seems like we go out and help a trapper get a lion out of usually a bobcat set, usually a foothold. I don't remember.
But as far as a snare, we're just talking lethal.
Yeah, I don't
lethal
remember.
devices. Do you?
Yeah, so I think it
been
happened.
a problem.
And the houndsmen are here, so I'm sure there's an opportunity for them to talk too. But one of the things they told me is that the coyote sets are usually in different places, what they're typically hunting in the wintertime. And they kind of know areas to avoid the bobcat sets. Usually a bobcat snare is a little bit smaller loop. There were a couple other historic questions. I can't remember what they were, but I'm happy to answer them if we need to.
Don't run off because one of these is going to be directed
I'll stick
to you.
around, yeah.
Okay. One of the questions, and it's kind of been asked, how many hounds, pets were reported prior to HB 469?
Yeah,
you
that's
kind
right.
of alluded.
Thanks
we
for
don't
reminding
really.
me. Yeah, so that's not something they would have reported to us. Just talking with Houndsman Associations, presidencies, and just different guys. It happened beforehand. I don't know that there were a lot of. Sometimes dogs get caught in traps and die. And it's not necessarily even a kill set. It's, maybe the collar died. The dog is just gone. They don't know where it is. They can't figure out where it is. And when they find it, it's been stuck for several days and died. So that kind of stuff. But again, that's more like, you're using public land, and those dogs are valuable, and they're meaningful to the family. And so that's a tragedy. And then there's the public side too, just when we talked about this, just the general public recreator using the backcountry and concern about pets, not just hunting dogs, but that's kind of the feedback we got when.
So since you brought that up, I'm going to skip down to a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Through this process, and it's nothing against the RAC members, it's nothing against you guys. Would you and Chet, what's your name? Sorry. Agree from just in this week, there is a major lack of information, understanding in what a snare is, what it isn't, what is a lethal snare is. There's been talk of a relaxing lock. That's been confused with a cable restraint. They're not the same thing.
Right.
People who are basically involved in wildlife stuff all the time don't have a good comprehension of what we're talking about here. Would you say it's a fair statement to say the general public who has this concern, who's brought this concern to you, probably has less of an understanding?
I'll let Chad answer that.
I was gonna say, this one sounds more like recent, so I'll take the recent stuff. I do think there is a lack of understanding, and I think we got to this decision just based off of the numbers of cougars being snared. Like that was probably the driving force, of just seeing like it's not a utilized method, or it's underutilized, or however you want to say it, that it didn't feel like by doing so, we weren't really taking a lot away. We're taking 7 cougars away.
So the data that you guys have used to come to this conclusion, because we are always hearing, we don't want rules, regulations, laws based off of emotion. We want based off of data. The data you are using is basically saying it's underutilized. We're only killing 7 a year with this process. I don't want to go to a comment. I'm just going to leave it here. We'll readdress that later. So yes, the data that you are using to put this proposal forth is based off of only your impression that is underutilized.
Yeah, it's based off of harvest, and then I would say, and calculating the risk.
But you don't have any data to, Brett Guyman, I wish he was here. He's the first one of the houndsmen that finally brought up a number.
Yeah.
We kind of can take that data and say, okay, yes, we have data. We have confirmation that 11 hounds were killed.
Yeah. I would say this too. I guess I'll just say, like, maybe even more so than hounds. Like, if somebody's golden retriever gets caught in one, that can get ugly.
But we're talking lion snares, lethal lion snares.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say there's probably 1,000 coyote snares out on out in the outdoors for every 1 lion snare?
I have no idea on that one. I mean, it feels
we've
like
got
people,
the producers using them. We've got ADF using them. We've got guys like me using them. They've been in use forever. Granted.
Let's keep it with questions for now. And then if you got comments, we're more than happy to hear them later in the comments.
Sorry, we keep going down that.
It's hard, huh?
We all get tempted to do that.
Yeah, it's hard.
In this wording, it says producers and agents would still be allowed to use them.
Mm-hmm.
What constitutes an agent?
Like their sheep herder, like whoever's out watching their livestock.
Okay, so I do work for a sheep producer out east of here.
Yeah.
She pays me to do it. Does that make me an agent?
Yeah.
So in that case, I would be basically authorized to use a lethal snare. Does there have to be proof of prior depredation by a lion?
I don't think on this one there doesn't need to be. But I would say, you know, with the use of the lethal snare, that would probably be in proximity of that allotment too.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I understand that.
Okay. I just wanted to make
I'm
sure
just
that was
trying to
clear.
clarify.
Yeah.
Some of these vague
Yeah.
things, you know?
Yep.
One of them I have heartburn with is you were asked in the Northern RAC, how do you define a lethal lion set? You said, quote, we're leaving that pretty
Let's make
vague
sure
on
we keep it
purpose.
in, keep it going with questions. If you
It
have
is,
questions
this
for
is
me.
a question.
Okay.
You said we are keeping that, and I said, quote, we're keeping that pretty vague on purpose. Why are you keeping that definition vague?
I was thinking about this quite a bit today. It's interesting because sometimes we're asked like, hey, get really specific with this. And then sometimes it's like, we don't want government overreach and keep it vague. So I guess we have to choose one or the other, right? But I think we don't, in this case, we don't want to be super restrictive on what people can use for trapping and lethal traps on other things. We're just saying don't target cougars. And we feel like if you're catching multiple cougars, you're targeting cougars. It would also be a very difficult, like if we start talking about every type of snare or trap, or every lethal set that can be used for cougars, when you start thinking about our law enforcement officers, which kind of was brought up with well, you brought it up with the UDAF trappers. That's a lot of, we don't have very many officers either. So
But at
that'd be a
some
lot
point
of-
in time, they're going to have to define that.
Yeah, so people, if you caught one, if this passes and you caught one, then you need to call us and turn it into us. And at that time, we'd be able to see that rather than going out, trying to inspect every trap that's out on the landscape saying, well, is this one looks like it's a cougar set, and it being a cougar set, now it has to have this, that, and the other. And I guess we feel like we're able to tell if it's targeting cougars by a couple different methods. And probably the biggest one is if you're catching a bunch of cougars and it's a cougar set. So yeah, that's why we landed there.
Okay, we'll come back to that one also. Are we talking about, we're saying we want to ban or prohibit lethal cougar sets? Are we trying to protect the lions or the dogs?
I would say more the dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's
So
the
so
risk.
technically, we are trying to eliminate a lethal outcome for a dog,
Yeah,
not a lion.
right.
Okay. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Gentleman in the gray hat. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Yeah.
He said gentlemen.
Yeah, please state your name and go ahead.
My name is Kelly Lair. You know, the question keeps coming up about whether these dead dogs was really documented. And I hate to question that, you know, and I'm a hound lover. I mean, I hunted hounds for many years and I've had dogs all my life. And I bet there isn't one person in here that doesn't love dogs, but you know, it's kind of ironic. Right after HB 469 came out, within a couple of weeks, we had houndsmen contacting us, asking us why we ever done that, because we was going to be killing all their dogs. And then over all the years, just me as a hound hunter and as a trapper, I've never heard of any dogs being killed in snares. I'm sure there was one here and there somewhere. Yes, there was. But it seemed really crazy to me that the very first year, there was all of a sudden 9 killed with snares. And I really don't think there was hardly anybody out there that was really targeting lions with snares that first year.
Are you able to turn that one into a question?
I am. Is there,
Good. I'm
are we
hoping you're going there.
sure,
All
are
right.
we sure that these was all documented and not just somebody that was pretty passionate about what they do coming up with some stories? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, the documentation came through the Houndsman Association, and I'm trying to look past you at Darren of like, because it was his time where they all confirmed, verified.
How did they
So-
confirm it? Just say, yes, they were, or we heard that they were killed? Okay. That doesn't sound like very good documentation to me, but anyway. Okay, now the last 2 years has been really, really good for weather for trapping. And I know from all them years of hunting hounds, and I, like I said, I still love hounds, but I know that weather hasn't been very good for most houndsmen. I mean, most houndsmen hunt lions when there's a lot of snow. So realistically, do you think that the last 2 years with what I just said has had very much effect on more lions being killed by traps and fewer by hounds?
It very well could, yeah. I mean, we're
Pretty sure it has.
yeah, like
Effect.
we're seeing total
Pretty sure.
harvest quite a bit lower
Thank
too.
you.
And hounds is usually our biggest harvest of
Oh
cougars.
yeah, for years,
Yeah.
people thought that houndsmen was the only ones that should kill lion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gentleman with a really nice hat, come on up. That's you that just raised your hand.
Other gray hat.
Sure.
Corey
You're not the one
Farnsworth.
I was talking to, but we'll start with you, yeah.
If lethal trapping contributes approximately 1 to 2% of total statewide cougar harvest, what measurable numerical benefit is expected from restricting lethal cougar sets?
So like what benefit do we get for restricting it? I guess.
How
I
do you
guess
know
it'd
it's
be-
effective?
How do we know if the
How do you
snaring is-
know if restricting cougar sets is effective?
We would still collect the data so that you still have to turn in your lion. So if you caught one and it was lethally killed, then we would still check that in. I'm not sure I know
No,
what you're trying to get at
if,
there.
If the purpose for restricting lethal sets is to protect dogs, how are we measuring that impact?
On dogs. Yeah. So a lot of this is risk, right? So hopefully we're not having any dogs or hounds killed. Like I said, we've had 11 reported the last 3 years. So if going forward we're doing better, then we'd say that that's a success.
How many of the lethal sets that took cougars were set by sportsmen versus non-sportsmen?
It was, I don't know that we have that, like non-sportsman,
Well, like
They-
your agriculture agents, your wildlife agents.
all these numbers that I'm talking about are sports harvest. So these are people with the hunting or combination license.
Do we know how many were taken by non-sportsmen
Yeah.
with snares?
Let me see if I have that handy right now. With snares?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that total number. No, I don't. I have the number of how many they harvested, but we didn't take the method on that.
With the dogs caught in snares, do we know how many were caught in sportsmen versus your other groups?
I don't think we've collected that data either, but I would guess that it was probably sportsmen, not.
So we don't know.
Don't know, but yeah.
If archery has an estimated 10 to 30% wound rate nationwide and hound hunting is risky, what constitutes risky, as in risky setting traps and catching hounds versus risky wounding animals or risky wounding dogs or hurting dogs while hound hunting?
I would say that that's the reason why we're here tonight. Like we have these conversations, we have this public process. We can decide as a group, the RAC can make recommendations, the Wildlife Board ultimately decides, but that's why we're here, is to decide if the risk is too high on one thing or another.
What total percentage of traps and snares have caught dogs? And what percentage of those dogs have perished?
Yeah, I don't think we know
No
how
data.
many traps are out on the landscape. Yeah.
If I generally set 50 plus snares a year and have been doing so for 16 years and only caught 2 dogs, which both were mine and both lived, and that is only 0.25% total caught, are these results being measured across the state of Utah to determine percent take or percent accidental harvest or perish? How many dogs perish in snares?
I think that goes back to your previous question, and we don't know how many are even out on the landscape. That's not something I don't think we collect that data of asking each trapper how many snares or traps they have out there. So that'd be a very difficult question to answer.
So
I guess
in our,
we could ask that, I guess, in future harvest, if we could really start asking how many traps everybody has. And
in our surveys that we're asked to take, we are asked those questions, not specifically with dogs. Just a couple more questions. Were alternative mitigation measures considered prior to recommending this restriction?
we sat down, we looked at the data. Like I said, we committed that we'd look at those methods, and we saw the number, and then we made that decision.
So it was just looking at restricting lethal cougar sets from sportsmen, period. There was no other looking at season dates or setback requirements or signage or different tools we can use. It was just banning that use.
Well, yeah, I'm sure we took a lot of things into consideration. Like this recommendation is for public land. We considered whether you just do that statewide on private land as well. Make the consideration whether you do for UDAF trappers to whether they can protect their allotments or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, we considered a lot of things, and this is where we landed.
And then another question based off of agents, a wildlife or livestock agent. Do they have to be hired by a livestock, by a producer?
I would say to be an agent, yeah,
Is that what the Division Wildlife Officer would say?
As far as like a conservation officer?
Yeah, conservation officer. If someone was out trapping cougars, claimed to be an agent of a livestock producer, how is that actually defined?
Should we ask JD since he's here? We got a law enforcement guy here, so.
Just to make sure I understand it right. You're asking if we contact a trapper out in the field, how do we verify if he's an agent for, there's different ways we can contact, obviously the rancher or whoever owns the livestock and work through it in that manner.
And then while you're up here, I've had many times where I've had a conservation officer checking my traps and different things, and they look for every little thing that I could be doing wrong, and I respect that. But how do these rules, how are they solid enough that one conservation officer in one region versus another in another area are not going to have different viewpoints on how to treat that trapper?
That's a good question. There is quite a bit of communication that goes on statewide as far as between officers and when we have questions and what we're seeing. So there's a fair amount of communication with that. And then with something like this that's been brought up, there's certain things that we'll look for, size of the loop, height, things like that, that'll kind of help define some of that.
And if someone does catch, and incidental cougar in this case, since they're not supposed to set a lethal set for a cougar. But if they do, is that cougar just taken away? Is that individual fined?
So it'll depend on the circumstance, right? We have incidental take that happens with all sorts of different species, with deer, with elk, with everything else. So we'll just, through the course of our investigation, we'll make a decision to try to decide if that person had targeted that animal or if they hadn't. If it's caught in a snare, technically at that point it's illegal, right? Because it was taken by a snare, so you wouldn't be able to keep it. But depending on how we handle that situation will depend on a lot of what the intent was.
Thank you. Sorry. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
This is the guy with the nice hat I was talking about. Do what?
I can't.
I said, so you're the one with the nice hat I was talking about.
All right, I'm nice hat. Jones and DeMille, you heard of them? Top notch. Okay, got a couple of questions. Taking the trapping portion of the Sportsman's Harvest out of the equation, okay, which was 77, I think was the number. What amount of the balance of that was taken by guides and outfitters?
I don't know.
That's what I thought you'd say. So my point being that you're talking about reducing or taking 1.2% of the harvest away. But sometime there's got to be a parameter where you look at the guides and outfitters, I'd say are going to take half of the balance after what the sport harvest is with traps. So there's going to leave a small or percentage of the sport harvest left. I mean, at some point in time, you have to address that percentage also versus the 1.2% that you're of the lethal snares and whatever. Follow my question? Not at all.
I don't think that was a question, but
it's not a question.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't a
Okay.
question, but
So, well, how many does the guides and outfitters take?
so the rest of them are hounds. Like how many of those hounds
I know,
hunters are guides and outfitter? I
But you
don't
have
know
them
that
doing
off
it.
the top of my head.
They're doing it as a profession, right? So they
Yeah,
have more
and
incentive to take more lions.
Yeah, if you would have asked me before the RAC meeting, I probably could have had that data
Yeah.
ready for tonight, but yeah, that wasn't a
Fair
question
enough.
I was
So,
anticipating.
when we have a non-targeted lion catch in a coyote snare, whatever, what happens to that lion once it's confiscated?
So if this passed, like going forward,
Yes.
then we would confiscate it, and then we'd probably go to our auction, like when we have the antler auction, then we do furs as well.
So
If
there's
it's a good hide.
So there'd be a cost involved to the division to prep that lion?
Yeah, there could potentially, like I said, anytime that we look at that, if it's salvageable, then we try to salvage it. But if it's not, then yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Lane Abraham.
Okay, thank you. Troy?
Troy Justinson, Sportsman Fish and Wildlife. Chad, have you ever considered firing Justin Shannon as your life coach? I think you better, buddy.
I gotta fire somebody.
We love you, brother. I appreciate it. I know you're taking some heat here and we know it's not you, so please don't take it personal. Yeah, there's been a lot of focus on dog safety here. And I guess my question is, and I trust, with the houndsmen come forth saying that we've lost, 11 hounds, to snares, but we know this is a risky business. We know that there's other risks besides getting caught snares. Do we have any idea how many number of hounds we lose to the actual bears or the lions if they catch it on the ground? Because we know that there is. I mean, it's on the internet. You've seen it. I mean, Guy, can you shed any light on that? How many you would estimate a year would be lost to fights?
That's a risk I'm willing to take, but it's not a risk I should have to take for snares.
Okay, I was just curious. The other thing that you come up, and I think is important that we take into consideration is incidental catch. There is incidental catch in trapping, snares, or anything else like that. Is there incidental catch in running hounds?
As far as, sorry, it's
I mean,
been a long night.
unintended catch, what they kill on the ground? Is there
So
incidental
when you
catch with running hounds?
running hounds and killing something other than what you're intending to kill? is
Or
that what you're-
things you shouldn't be killing? Being females, kittens?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's understandable. It's both. It's just gonna happen, but I think that's important that we see.
Thanks, Troy. Who's anybody else? Let's go, Eric.
I can't believe there's still more questions to be asked.
Chad, buckle in because I thought of a couple while.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
A couple of questions. Eric, Luke, do we have a real definition of a lethal set? I hear the lethal set all the time, but what constitutes a lethal? Is any snare a lethal set?
No. So I wish I would have pulled that up. Maybe I can find it real quick, but it's a trap that is intended to immediately or quickly kill the animal upon triggering. Thank you.
So does that mean it has to be spring loaded or? This thing is very vague and I've trapped for years and I still don't understand what is being proposed. So
if
a
your
lethal
trap
set,
is,
it-
if it's set and it's going to immediately kill it or quickly kill it, then we would consider that a lethal trap.
wouldn't that be any snare?
No, people snare on leg holds and whatnot that, right?
Not
Foothold
typically,
snare?
but, yeah, it's possible, not typical though.
Yeah.
So the next question I have is does this rule applies to public trappers, public hunters? How does it apply? You said producers and their agents. What about like government trappers?
Right. It wouldn't, this is for sports harvest.
Sports harvest only, so it wouldn't apply to government trappers. Okay.
Any other questions from the audience? Come on up.
Can we reverse this idea instead of put the blame?
Can you
back
talk
on the
right
trappers?
into the mic? I think,
Oh,
yeah.
can we reverse that? So it's not on the trappers, so it goes back on the houndsmen? You see the houndsmen's going down in the morning time, they got the dogs all over the trucks, baying and bouncing across the truck, looking for any whiff of cat that they can get. As soon as they get it, they cut them loose. Is that their responsibility? You might be up there trapping where there hasn't been any lions crossing, but yet they kick a dog out on a scent that's down below, and then they don't see him again for 10 hours, 12 hours, looking at one or two dogs by their GPS. I don't.
So I would say currently the responsibility is on the houndsman, because there are snares out there. They know there are snares. From the feedback I've got, there's a bunch of them that are pretty hesitant, and if they know there's an area that has a bunch of lethal cougar snares in it.
But I got to tippy toe through the bushes and the trees to go in and set my snares or my sets. So they don't know that I'm there.
Yeah.
Unless you got snow covered road or something, or your snowmobile tracks, four-wheeler tracks, they don't know that you're anywhere in the area. But because that dog picked up a scent, then that becomes their liability, where it wasn't mine.
And I'd say currently that's where it is at, is it's on the houndsman, because you're able to put snares wherever you'd like. So yeah, that's what you described. What you described is how I feel like it is right now.
Right. And then sometimes when you set a snare, you maybe do a jump over. So you got it raised up off the ground. So your snare loop's higher. So you got a deadfall. So the cat's going to jump over, coyote's going to jump over, which would put a lion being able to step right over the top of it. And then if he entangles in a snare and he flops around a little bit, same as a dog, if he rolls a couple times, he's tight, even if it's not a keel snare. So then I'm in trouble again. A lot to that.
I didn't hear that question. I didn't hear a question in that, I guess.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? It looks like we have a couple questions from the RAC.
Yeah, everyone got my brain going. So this is going to be a bunch of my ignorance, which everyone always has to get subject to. So I feel like within the last year, you guys came through with some lion study where we were just going to hammer the lions on like 5 units and see if that helped the deer. Did that pass? Did we get that all the way through, or did that fail?
It wasn't a vote. It was just an informational, like, that's
great.
what we're doing.
Are we using snares on those units that we're doing the
Yes.
study on?
Yes.
Okay. Who's setting the snares?
So we have 2 UDAF trappers and a division employee that are on that. So.
Okay. Another question. Here's my ignorance. I didn't get lucky enough to draw a lion tag when you guys used to make us pay for it. But back then, did we just, like what we do with bears, did we run pursuit only seasons for lions back in those days? Or has it always been, no, there's never been just a pursuit only season for lions?
We would have seasons. Now you're testing my memory. I know we'd have seasons, but we'd have harvest objective units, we'd have limited entry units, and sometimes you'd have a limited entry that would turn into a harvest objective. Whether you could run dogs and there was just a pursuit season, I want to say yes, but I'm not. Yes, okay. That's where my memory is trying to take me.
Okay. All right.
I have one question, then we'll move on.
Okay.
So it seems like a lot of the reason that behind this is maybe some speculation, maybe psychologically people have heard what might happen and have assumed that it's already happened. And there's a lot going on that's bad. Is there, in your opinion, and since we're just kind of guessing anyway, in your opinion, as a guess, do you think that if we retain snares as an option for mountain lions, would that threaten the health of the species, of the amount of mountain lions we have in Utah?
I mean, the mountain lion harvest currently with lethal sets is, I think it was 1.2% is what somebody said. It's less than 2%. It really doesn't move the needle either way.
Okay.
It feels like we have better methods or other methods that are utilized more to get our harvest than what we have on snares.
Okay, thank you. All right. Other questions from the RAC? Okay, let's move on to online comments.
We had one on this one. So online comments, just one. Strongly disagreed. So there, I'll just read you the whole thing instead of trying to summarize it. There's only one of them. It reads, and I am absolutely against restricting the use of lethal trapping methods on public ground for taking lions. These methods, even though only a small part of the lion harvest, should be protected and be allowed to continue. Lethal methods, such as the snare and coniber, are tried and true methods of take. They are legal for other fur bearers and should remain legal for lions. I feel this is a slippery slope to other restrictions in trapping that have been used for literally centuries. Trapping is under attack all across the West. We have bans in California and Colorado on foothold traps, snares, and conibers. Do we want to be like those states and ban something because a person or group doesn't like it? Trapping in one form or another is as old as time. Please protect trapping and its method the same as you would as if your preferred hunting method was under attack, because it will be at some point. Please vote against this proposal.
Awesome, thanks. So we're going to move to comments. That's it, right, for the online ones? Okay. We'll move to comments from the audience now. Yeah, I was looking for my timer on my phone. You got a timer? So yeah, if you're representing a group, just say who that group is. We'll give you 5 minutes. If you're representing yourself, we ask you to do it in 3 minutes. Happy to hear everybody's comments. Let's be respectful those times. Thank you. And let's start with Corey Farnsworth.
Corey Farnsworth, Utah Trappers Association. The Utah Trappers Association strongly opposes this recommendation as written. We ask that the recommendation be reviewed and advised to look at alternatives for banning lethal sets for cougar take. We ask that the Utah Trappers Association be included in these discussions. We ask that measurable recorded data be reviewed and outcomes and goals be looked at before coming to conclusions. We do support livestock managers and government officials to continue to use lethal sets for taking cougar. Trapping, including the use of lethal sets, is an important wildlife management tool, and we need to work to protect trapping as well as other recreation, including hound hunting. We don't believe that cougars should be completely eradicated and should be properly managed with all tools available to sportsmen. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Corey. Let's move on to Brandon Payne.
Okay, quick question. Since I'm one of the 1.2%, can I be instead of a, private public person, can I have the 5 minutes?
Can you have what?
Can I have 5 minutes since I'm one of the 1.2%?
Do you represent a group?
Yeah.
The 1.2%. We'll give you 3 minutes, but let's.
Before you start my timer real quick, there has been questions. What is a killing snare? What is a cable restraint? What is a relaxing snare? I've made up examples if you guys want to. Want me to explain about that later?
We would, yeah, let's have you explain them. Let's have that happen.
Just stand close, stand in front of the TV though. Well, that's gonna make Brandon, man. Do you want me to hold the microphone up in his man?
We've got all night. Central Region took 4 hours. We've only been here an hour and a half.
You just gotta speak into the mic.
Just speak in the mic.
Yeah, as you demonstrate.
Okay. I've got it wound up so many times. Let me get it loose.
I'm moving in.
You're moving? You want me to move? You want me?
You're good. I'll stand next to the mic.
You can sit it down. You can sit it down. You haven't started my timer yet because this is education. You guys don't want to see my ugly face. Okay. For Utah regulations, we have to have a breakaway device that will open up 300 pounds or greater is exerted on it. I know by experience this spring, a good sized tomp will open that up. I've had it happen 3 times. This is by definition a lethal snare. It doesn't back up. It sucks down. Basically, the tighter you pull, the tighter it's going to suck down. It's not going to release. This is a relaxing snare. Pull it down. It doesn't lock down. It basically, it will back up. Is that lethal? For a dog that hasn't been tied up? For a lion? Yes, definitely it's lethal. As long as they keep fighting, it's going to choke them. It does have the breakaway on it also. So this would be legal to use in Utah also. Just because this is basically a lethal design snare doesn't mean it kills everything that gets in it. Like I said, I do a lot of trapping for a sheep producer. I've caught 5 Akbosh sheepdogs in a snare. I've caught sheep in a snare. I've caught border collies in a snare. I've caught a blue heeler in a snare. I have my dogs with me all the time and my, on my trap line. I have yet to kill one. I am nervous sometimes with my dogs. The sheep herders are aware. I let them know where they're at. If they're missing a dog, they call me, hey, where have you got snares? They go find them. They get them out. Like I said, yes, there is that chance. I understand that. Is this going to save a dog that hasn't been tied up from dying? Chances are it depends on the dog. I've had coyotes caught around the neck in a lethal snare that were live. They were halter broke. They laid there like a dog would. This by definition, it doesn't have a relaxing lock. It will suck down, it won't back up. By most states' definition, this is a cable restraint. The idea behind that is they don't want the coyote killed. They don't want the fox killed. They have different definitions of the circumference that it will close down to. But basically, it's not, the idea is to restrain the animal, not kill it. Where we're talking about trying to protect dogs, if the process would
Let's
have-
go ahead and start that time now for the comments, okay? Thank you for showing us that, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and start. Brandon Payne, represent myself and the 1.2% because this does affect me. Briefly, I'm going to age myself. I trapped my first coyote when I was 12 years old in 1982. 1985, I got 2 hound pups from a high school substitute teacher. From then on till the early 20s, I ran hounds. I understand both sides of the issue. Right now, I'm a trapper again. This does affect me. When the law passed, I've trapped lions incidentally and bobcat traps prior to this. You know, no harm, no foul, you turn them loose. When they passed this, I thought, I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to trap a lion because legally I can trap it and keep it now. I end up trapping 2. The discussion has been brought up, what happens when we have an incidental catch? If this passes, the DWR takes it, they try to recoup some money. I sold 2 lions last year at the Idaho for sale. It cost me $400 a piece to have a taxidermist skin them and tan them. I sold one for $550, one for $350. Basically, there's no money in trapping lions. I don't see people targeting it for that aspect. This spring, I trapped 2 lions, a full-size female, a full-size tom. There was another full-size tom with them that broke out of 2 snares. These are within 3/4 of a mile of Wellington city limits in an agricultural area. I was asked by a rancher to get rid of some coyotes he's seen by his calves. There was no money involved. He was close enough. I'll just do it for the bounty. So if this passed, or if this was in effect then, I would have to have, they were in a coyote snare. I trapped 2 of them. That would have, you know, threw up red flags with law enforcement. Hey, this guy is targeting lions. I do more coyote snares in trails than I do under fences. Yes, there's a difference. If I was targeting lions, the height, the loop size, all that stuff would be different. The slippery slope comments come up. The slippery slope everybody's talking about is a progression to take our rights away, our trapping rights away. The slippery slope I'm most concerned about is the DWR using data that doesn't support what they're going after. They're using that as an excuse basically to say, okay, it's not going to matter. The whole gist of this proposal is based on emotion or perceived threat. That's the slippery slope I'm nervous about. I just got back from a week trying to do coyote control in Colorado. I'm sure you guys are aware what laws, rules, regulations based off on public opinion has done to Colorado and the ability to manage their wildlife. I'd recommend you follow some of the other RACs, table this, send it back to the DWR, get the users together, come up with a better alternative. Thanks.
Thank you. Jerry Swayze.
Jerry Swayze, Utah Trapper Association. I'd just recommend not voting for it. Turn it down at this time till more data is available.
Thank you. Terry Abraham.
I'm Terry Abraham, trapper. I'm speaking for myself. I'm opposed to this regulation. From what I've gathered from this RAC and the previous RACs, there's 2 things pushing this. One is dog safety, which we've heard a lot about tonight. The other is the lack of participation in the short harvest of lions with this method. On that part of it, I think because 99% of us have chose not to take that method, I don't think the other 1% should lose their right. They should still be out there. I'm opposed to that. I think we need to support them. But it brings up, maybe us as trappers have approached this wrong for the last 3 years. If it's the lack of participation and the lack of harvest, we can surely encourage more of our trappers to take advantage of this. Hang more snares, take more lions. That would take care of that problem. But I'm not really sure that's the answer we want. Us trappers, we respect the other groups that are out there. And we want to get along with them. And batting heads with them is not the way to go. But at the same time, we don't want to lose this tool. We want to preserve what we got. And as Brandon showed, there's other options out there. There's other ways to handle this. And I got to agree with him that this should really be tabled, and the group should get together, and there should be a discussion, and this should come back to before you guys at another time. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Lane Abraham.
Good evening. I'm Lane Abraham. I'll be representing myself tonight. I'm a trapper and I'm a snaresman. I've been trapping pretty much my whole life. My mother told me that when I was like 5 years old, all I wanted for Christmas was 2 mouse traps. Man, what an unbelievable journey I've had in my whole life out pursuing, taking wildlife, renewable resources. I learned most of my skills through attending the Utah Trappers Association's conventions and rendezvous, watching people show you how to make trap sets, how to do it right, how to do it ethically. At the same time, while I've been out in that great outdoors, I've gained a true love for that landscape. If you ask people that know me, they'd tell you that I'm the biggest advocate of opportunity, not only for myself, but for the other people who are out there doing whatever it is they prefer to do. I may not necessarily agree with what they do, but I will damn sure defend their right to do it. A couple of weeks from now, over there in Richfield, we're holding a young trapper, new trapper, like a summer camp out, where those people can come and participate in the fur harvester education program that's mandated, and for them to get their certificate so they can legally trap. At the same time, while we're putting on this camp and the people are there, these young trappers are going to have veteran trappers there teaching them how to make these sets, how to do it legally and ethically. But also, while they're there, they're going to be taught the responsibility of setting traps. You know what? We don't need more regulation. We need more education. So I'm going to stand with the Trappers Association tonight and strongly oppose this old regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lane. Kelly Lair.
Hello. I have a struggle with this. Hello, my name is Kelly Lair. For over 37 years of my life, I was a diehard houndsman as well as an avid trapper. As age started creeping up on me, my wife and my body eventually convinced me that it was time to give up hounds, which had been a big part of my life. I do want to mention one thing real quick. During all those years of hound hunting, I hunted where there's quite a few rattlesnakes, and I've seen 3 different dogs get bit by rattlesnakes. Only one of them died, but the other 2 that didn't die cost a lot of money to get them back in fairly good health. But, I kept on hunting there because I knew there's a lot of bears in that area. But anyway, that's beside the point, I guess. But tonight I'm here to represent the Utah Trappers Association. Our mission is and always has been to preserve our trapping heritage by promoting modern and humane and ethical practices. Our members have provided a great deal of predator management at no cost to sportsmen or government agency for over 50 years. For many years, some of our members have wanted to be able to harvest a cougar on their own using snares or traps. Even though we didn't campaign for it, this was the first time we were going to have that opportunity. I'm sorry, I missed one paragraph. I kind of chopped some of this out because I didn't want to repeat the same things that have been said over and over, but I did want to mention that we were as surprised as anybody when House Bill 469 was passed. And we don't think cougars should be annihilated, but like all wildlife, they need to be managed. Okay, fast forward. As you can see, trapping cougars has been very effective so far. It's been proven on this lion study units where deer herds were struggling the most. I'm going to skip through most of this, but modern trapping methods are probably the most humane, ethical, and effective method of predator control used today. And I'm going to skip through all this because Brandon done a very good presentation to you guys, kind of explaining some of the options when you're snaring. But anyway, I want to go on down. If this proposed amendment is rejected, the Utah Trappers Association would love to encourage implementing a required cougar trapping course, which could be similar to other currently used courses, but focus on ethical methods of trapping cougars. When we first saw this recommended rule change, we reached out to our over 520 members. I sent them out, everybody out an email asking for feedback on this proposed amendment. And I didn't try and sway them in any way. I just wanted their unbiased opinion, of what they really thought of it. But the overwhelming response that we received was in opposition to the rule change, not primarily because every member planned to snare a cougar, but many see this as possibly the first step to losing our privileges, one at a time, like what's happened in surrounding states. We oppose this amendment and suggest tabling the recommendation, allowing time to evaluate the options and invite the Utah Trappers Association to be included in the discussions. We as trappers believe in science-based wildlife management and would like to see the DWR regain control of managing all game animals, predators, and other wildlife species. We've watched some of our surrounding states go from science-based to emotion-based predator management, and we hope that Utah doesn't follow down that same path. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Troy Justinson, SFW.
Troy Justinson, Sports and Fish and Wildlife. We don't support this, and we asked the RAC vote it down and kick it back to the division and ask them to come forward with a new proposal that allows the continued use to trap and pursue lions with lethal snares. And also maybe look at some areas that this doesn't apply. If there's a place on the Wasatch Front or around Park City that the risk is too great, we understand that, but to have them come back with a better proposal. It's been evident through this whole RAC process, the whole focus is protecting the hounds. And I get it. I'm not a houndsman. I'm very close friends with a lot of houndsmen, and that's their heritage. And I support that. But there's room in this landscape for all of us, and there's got to be give and take in both places. Taking away the ability to use these lethal snares. Now, it's been pointed out that it's relatively new, hasn't been used in a lot of these areas, but trust me, it's been expanded. These will be a critical tool for allowing us to go after these cats who are in that low-lying desert country that don't see a lot of hounds. In fact, some of that country never sees hounds. But once a lion gets into our wild sheep population, it's pretty much done. And not to be able to have that ability to target those animals just for fear of, I get it. As a houndsman, you just got to realize you accept some of that. And guys, he understands that. He knows that. He puts dogs at risk. But because you choose that sport, you just got to accept some of the outcome. But I do believe there's things we can do, like Brandon pointed out, to help mitigate some of this stuff and protect some of those guys, the property hounds. But just to outlaw ban it, would be a travesty. So I had asked this RAC to vote it down, kick it back to the division to come with a better proposal that's more suitable, that takes care of all user groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Kevin Albrecht.
Kevin Albrecht representing myself. I am not a houndsman and I am not a trapper. My wife, if she's watching this, she's going to invite Lane to come trap a mouse because I fail miserably. But I'm here because I feel strongly that we all can work together to find a solution. This RAC knows very well that we were faced with a problem down on the LaSalle's many years ago, where we were one of the only states left where we allowed hound hunting. And we found ourselves, some camps would have over 200 dogs in a camp. We did not ban hounds, but we managed hounds, and we made a rule there were 16 hounds. And I think if you ask the Forest Service, if you ask me, the campers, we solved that. But the solution was not to ban everything because there was a problem. It was because all sides got together and found a solution. And I would tell you absolutely today, we can do the same thing with here. We can all come together. We can find that solution without a total ban. We can find those areas where we all agree, and we can be bigger than the problem. And I really feel that. Normally, the division, when they want input, they put a committee together. This is the opposite of that, where it has gone through a RAC tour, and basically we've got all that information that a committee would put together. I would say that because of all the information, that the division does not now need to put a committee together. They've already gathered that information from this RAC tour, and with that, the RAC can ask the division to find those common ground. Two of those I would say would be what we've learned today with those snares, and also the areas where we do it, and come back with a map. That would be a couple things the division could come back with. And again, I would say if this RAC votes to oppose this, that I would urge the RAC to not go back to a committee, because that information's already been gathered through the RAC tours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Eric Luke.
Shorter. Eric Luke representing myself. I'm not a houndsman. I am a trapper. I do have friends who are houndsmen. I know the time, the investments, the huge amounts of money that they put into those dogs. So I get their concern. That being said, this proposal, as I see it, is not a good proposal. It's too vague. It's a blanket thing. I agree with what's been said. We can do a better job of putting together a proposal that will help resolve the issues. Over my years of trapping, I've caught in leg hold traps several lions. I have yet to hold one. Leg hold traps, you have to have such a large trap to do that. To hold a lion, they're so powerful. I've had them literally pull traps into 5 pieces. By banning snares, you take away one tool that the normal trappers have an actual opportunity to take a lion with, and actually hold it and keep it. I'm sure there are lions that are caught in foothold traps and held, but I guarantee there's more that are lost, caught, and pulled out than are actually held. I believe that this is a very slippery slope. I believe this is the first
it was stated in the Central RAC. I don't know if anybody watched that. This is just the first step in losing the entire opportunity to trap if this is passed. So I encourage you to oppose this proposal. Make them come back with something a little bit better. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And our last comment, Guy Webster.
I represent myself, but I will speak in behalf of the Utah Houndsman Association directly to you, Scoot. I was on the board for 8 years prior to House Bill 469, and it was not a issue with hounds getting caught in traps prior to that, and I'm still directly involved, been a lifetime member of them. First of all, lions were not legal to trap prior to 469. This is not a slippery slope to lose all trapping. They were given something. It's proven to be detrimental. It's proven to take hounds, and it's not just hounds. I mean, I'm more concerned about just my pet dog that I go ride mules with, and I do it in sheep units in places that's there. Hounds I've got tracking collars on, but a lot of people don't. The Hound Association has chosen not to go public, not to try to make big issue about this, because that is the slippery slope you guys have to worry about. We have photographs. We've got a lot of gruesome images of dead dogs caught in snares. We're not going public with that because we do not want to see trapping taken away. The only thing we're asking for is that this does pass, that it does take the lethal snares out of the equation, but a trapper can still go out and set traps for lions with leg hold traps and do it legally. We're trying to help you guys keep your sport. But if you want to continue with the lethal, that is where you're going to lose, because if that goes public, the right person with the right dog gets their dog caught in a lethal trap and goes to the right media sources, you're going to lose your trapping. That is your slippery slope. We're not opposed to you guys harvesting lions. The houndsmen are not opposed to it. What we're opposed to is losing a lion that we have control over. It's a human cause. Yeah, there's dangers of a lion throwing a dog off a ledge. Had it happen, there's dangers of bears getting a dog. There's dangers of rattlesnakes, but they're not human caused. And we don't have control of that, but we do have control of lethal snares being set for lions that are ending up taking dogs. And so I'm definitely in support, and the Hound Association is in support of this bill.
All right, thank you, Guy. We went through online comments, right? Okay, let's take it to the RAC and start with comments. Go ahead, Trish.
Yeah, I'll start. So I grew up trapping. I was a muskrat trapper, so not big, nothing too big. And my dad and brother are avid trappers in Nevada. I want to preserve that sport. I think it's very important, and we are surrounded by states where it is disappearing. I kind of struggle with this. I'm going to go both ways on this and say a couple things. Sometimes you do have to give a little bit to keep what you want. And so I just want to state that. And I'm not saying to give up snares. I'm just saying sometimes you have to give a little bit to keep what you want. And my concern, and I've said this with houndsmen in the past, like, you don't give it all, sometimes you are going to lose it. So I'm just throwing that out. I think a really great solution is to send this back. I think we have some expertise right here. I mean, I learned a lot. I haven't seen snares before. I've always done leg holds. And so I think we have a lot of expertise that can go back with the division. You can remove a certain type of snare, I would assume, that we've spoke about. And I think it could be brought back, and everybody would be good, I hope. So that would be my recommendation, is to table this. I'm not going to say necessarily a committee, but I would invite the division to invite the experts that we have quite a few here in the room to come up, do a little tweaking to the rule and send it back. That would be my recommendation.
I feel like I could talk about this forever, but I'll spare you the guys that, because I feel like we already have talked about it forever. But 2 years ago, my son wanted to get into trapping and never trapped in my life. picked up some traps, started it, and my ADHD brain doesn't let me do things just little bits. I got to go all in. So the last 2 years, I've been a trapper, more of a metal checker in the woods. But one thing that it did bring me into this position in the RAC is this was a blind spot in my brain. I wasn't able to see how trappers see the world, how they see the rules that are put out there, but this opened that up. And one thing I do see with trappers now that I sit on the RAC is we are very good at wanting data from everything. We want every animal killed to be reported. We just voted in for turkeys. Every turkey kill has to be reported. But anytime there's a rule put on trappers, it always seems to be a reactive to an idea of a risk. During the last time fur bearers were brought up in this RAC, I brought up the fact that we are protecting river otters in an area that we don't even have a river otter management plan. It hasn't been updated since 2010, but we're still implementing these rules on these trappers when we're unable to even do the documentation to track the river otters. So with that, I think seeing another regulation come across on trappers that doesn't have any data is a bad step for us to push that forward and continue to push down on trappers without having any real hardcore data. So I'll leave it at that.
I'm not smart enough to trap or strong enough to run dogs. I'll tell you that. But I have good friends and associates that do, and I definitely think that over the years I've shared the mountain with both. I think there's been a lot of really good suggestions that have come up in both the northern and southern region RACs. A lot of good concerns, a lot of good points made. I think I think there was a lot of good things brought up in the Trappers Association's letter that went out to the RAC. I'm going to focus on, for me, what's probably the biggest hang-up, but I have a lot of hang-ups with what's being proposed. I find it really disconcerting that for our private landowners, they get their own tag allocation, they get their own draw, they get their own statutory mandated tag issue. They don't lose any points. They run trail cameras all year. And then the division wants to run another bill, and they can trap however they want. But if you're a public hunter on public land, you can't run trail cameras after a certain point, and you can't trap in this method. Oh, unless there's a stockman that wants to pay you, and then you can. I just can't get behind that. It doesn't work for me on so many levels. Now, having said that, I think some sentiment though that was shared, it was really important. I don't think I will sit here and say there's not a problem. Right? I think there's a problem that the legislature got involved with wildlife management, and now here we are. And so now we're left with dealing with the aftermath, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. So I think the sentiment that was shared of we can come together and find a win for everyone is possible. And I don't think an all-out ban is that. I think there's a multitude of other options, right? Certain snares don't work. Certain locations don't work. Seasons, maybe we need it. But there's a myriad of other things we can do besides just cutting it off. And I would love to see us work towards that type of solution. So I'm in agreement with some of the sentiment that's been shared in that. I would like to see this proposal go back to the division, not be approved, and give the division a second chance at coming up with something a little more well-refined. I also agree with the sentiment that I don't know at this point the committee is necessarily helpful, but I think that what's been proposed throughout the RAC should be taken into consideration. I think specific groups should be reached out to, and I think the division can get another chance at bringing something that makes way more sense and is more of a compromise instead of just this or that. And I certainly hope to see something that doesn't say that private landowners and producers get to do X, and if you're a sportsman on public land, you are shut out from that, because that's going to be hard for me to support as well.
That's my 2 cents. I might be up to $1 now. That was good.
Yeah, we're keeping tab. Thanks, Cash. Let's go over here to the right side of the group. My right.
I think this proposal inadvertently pitted trappers against the houndsmen. I don't think that's what they meant for this to happen this way. I hear you, Guy. The last thing I want to do is hang up someone's hound. I don't think any trappers out there looking to become Instagram famous by catching someone's dog. That's the last thing on any of their minds. But I would like to see that those two organizations come together and come up with some sort of something that would work for them and maybe throw it back to the division. As is, I don't know that would support this proposal. I do think trapping should be involved here. I don't know the reasoning it wasn't until 3 years ago. I don't know what originally started that, but I think trappers should be able to trap lines. I think they should be able to use snares. But there's houndsmen on the landscape too. And so how do we come together as houndsmen, as trappers? What ideas, do we throw out there to make that happen? Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I would like to concur and share the same sentiment that most of the RAC members have. I don't have hounds, I don't trap, but I've ran bird dogs my whole life. And every time I go out chucker hunting, I run the same risk. And so I think there's risks that come with the professions we choose and the animals we pursue. And I think there's lots of examples. I mean, we already have regulations with bear baiting. They can't be so close to trails. They can't be so close to roads. They can't be so close to water. There's common sense regulations that can be put in place, and you guys have already talked about doing that together. So I don't think I could support the recommendation as it is either.
Basically just echo the majority.
I have one last comment. Back to Brandon's point, question about law enforcement, considering that you're targeting an animal after you've caught consecutive lions, if that's not actually what you're doing. Now you become red flagged, or based on an investigation, if you were really trapping or snaring coyotes and you coincidentally or got lucky and caught 2 or 3 lions in a season, now you're tagged as targeting lions.
Can I make a motion?
You bet.
I would make a motion that we reject the division's proposal.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll do this vote individually. Any discussion on the motion?
Just rather than have a lot of discussion on it, just as it's been proposed, just kick it back and work it, fine tune it, and maybe bring it back.
My proposal is just to reject it. That's up to the DWR to decide what they want to do after.
I
the
think
board
that would
makes a
still be,
decision.
they would still have that freedom if they choose to do that. Yeah. Be like dangling the same piece of bait in front of a fish. But anyway, let's start with Trish. Yes.
Your proposal is just to reject it.
Do you want me to start on the other side?
Yeah.
No, I'm just, we'll do that. Brad, let's start with, we always start over here. We're going to start with Brad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
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 I made the proposal, so yes.
Yes, and we'll see what the wildlife board does, so.
Let's go to Jake
Yes.
and Justin.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Can we take a quick break, 5 minutes before we move on to these next 2 agenda items? And we appreciate everybody's comments, everybody that showed up today. We appreciate that. Okay, we're live again, and looks like we're losing everybody, so.
We're here for you.
Yeah, don't be offended. All right, so we're going to go to the next action item. R 657-28, use of division land rules with Chelsea Duke.
All
And
right.
so, yeah, if you have any clarifications, anything you'd like to do.
I just like to take a couple of minutes and just explain how we got here and why you're looking at this rule again. So if you remember last year, I presented the same rule with some revisions, and that came out of House Bill 309. And what that did was it required anybody visiting a wildlife management or a waterfowl management in class 1 and 2 counties to have a hunting, fishing, or combination license to be able to access that WMA. And that really only applied to the northern and central regions. And so we briefly talked about it last year here. But then this year, this legislative session, the public had some concerns about that law that was implemented last year. And so the legislature decided to re-look at that section of code and come back with a different change. So what happened this year was House Bill 30 was passed, which now requires if you're on a wildlife management area or waterfowl management area to possess a hunting, fishing, or combo license, or obtain a free digital access permit, which you just have to watch an educational video, acknowledge a statement about access, and then we have to ask you for a donation towards wildlife management areas, but the course is free. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because now over the next 3 fiscal years, this is going to roll out to all wildlife and waterfowl management areas across the state. So this will be impacting our Southeastern WMAs in the next 2 and then 3 years. So that's the spiel. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of how this new law impacts you. And then this rule that you are looking at today clarifies some of the things that we were asked by the legislature to get board approval for.
Okay, questions from the RAC? Silence, all right. Questions from the audience? Okay. Any comments on this one? All right. Go ahead.
So weren't all these lands, they made it so all the public could access them? Because beforehand it was just required a license. So you had to be a hunter or of sorts to access the land, and then the legislature wanted them to be accessible to all. What am I thinking? All the people in Utah, all the citizens of Utah, and so they allowed the free permit.
Yeah, so I don't want to speak for the legislature, but some of the feedback that we heard was non-consumptive users wanting to go to these areas and watch wildlife or trail run or ride their mountain bike, and they didn't feel like obtaining a hunting, fishing license was relevant to them because they weren't a consumptive user. And from my understanding, the intent of the legislation the first time was hunting and fishing licenses are the ones that buy these properties and maintain those properties. And so the legislature wanted the public to be understanding of what these lands are for and how they are purchased. And then there was a lot of pushback from the public on that. And so then the legislature this year opened this up and said, okay, well, here's a free option then. Learn about the WMAs, learn about why we have these lands, and then hopefully some educational component for the people that didn't want to buy a hunting or fishing license. I hope that answers your question.
So nothing changed. It still is paid for by hunting and fishing, right? But utilized by many others.
Yes, absolutely. So the majority of our properties, we've been buying land in the state of Utah since 1901. And most, if not all of our properties are purchased with hunting and fishing license dollars. Sportsmen's groups contribute funds, matching. And then most of our funding comes from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through Pittman Robertson and Dingle Johnson match.
All right, thank you. Any online comments on this? All right, let's go to comments from the RAC.
I'll make a comment. So I represent sportsmen here. So those that pay for these WMA lands, I think public lands are the greatest gift we have as Americans. And as a sportsman, I am glad to share those lands as public lands that we purchase with non-consumptive users. I think that when the legislature went through to put this through, they stepped too far into saying that you had to buy a hunting or fishing license. They kind of forced us as a RAC to approve that, just the rule. We don't have to approve the legislative action, but just the rule. And that is another example of what Cash brought up before, is the legislature kind of mudding up these waters that this public process is supposed to help with. I think where they landed now is great. It's awesome that they can learn that hunting and fishing licenses pay for these lands that they enjoy, and I hope they continue to enjoy them. And when things come across in legislation, things come across the ballot that limit the rights of hunting and fishing, maybe they can see that we are providing some of the recreational uses that they enjoy.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Try not to say too much, but yeah, I think it is important to start thinking how non-consumptive users can start contributing. And, there's huge debates, but concepts like a backpack tax, right? That everybody, it's thoughts. And the last thing I'll say is I struggle with the Utah State Legislature getting too involved with wildlife. That it bothers me, but it is what it is. It's happening more and more. So that's just general comment.
Any other comments? Yeah, I actually like what Charles said. At first I was thinking, well, it's kind of like we get fuel excise tax that pays for roads and highways, and then we have a bunch of electrical vehicles that don't pay that, So I'm like, okay, well, how do they compensate for that? And they're still using the resource, right? But what you said, Charles, I mean, honestly, you kind of convinced me. I'm like, okay, let's show everybody who pays for all this, where this is coming from. And hopefully those that aren't hunters will maybe be a little more helpful of our cause. So with that, if there's no other comments, we'll move to a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept as proposed.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Jake?
Yes.
And Justin. Well, so that sounds like we've lost Justin again, maybe, but we'll call it unanimous. Okay, on to the next item, white sturgeon introduction and regulations. I think we have Craig walk. Oh, I'm sorry, missing one. Okay, 11. All right. Okay, sorry. Just getting antsy, guys. R657-75 wildlife consultation procedure for renewable energy facilities with Daniel Olson.
Yeah, if it's okay, can I provide just some real brief background on this one?
Absolutely.
So this legislative session, there were two bills that passed that require the owners or operators of solar and wind facilities to consult with DWR on their projects. One of the bills also directed us to make an administrative rule on how that consultation process happens. And so our decision space on this one's pretty small. It's just how the process happens. The rest of it was all defined in these bills that were passed. And then one thing I wanted to mention is it doesn't give DWR the authority to approve or deny these projects. It only gives us a seat at the table to work with the folks that are doing them to bring wildlife into the conversation and discuss how we can minimize the impacts that happen to wildlife from them. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have about this one.
I have one question. So this is coordination on public lands with the energy people, correct?
It's all lands.
All lands.
Yeah.
So Sitla's involved in this as well. So if a solar entity goes to a Sitla land and wants to lease it, it has to come through you, consult with you as well?
Yes.
Through the DWR?
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's great. I just, I'm a part of a local land use authority, right? Counties or municipalities are who's in charge of zoning and regulation and permitting. So I'm wondering how that dovetails. I mean, unless you change the land use code of municipalities and counties, I don't know if you have much teeth on this. So anyways, maybe you can explain how this is.
That's a really good point, Tricia. So I think the intent is really good and it will help with the issue. So the way it's going to work is, so the developer will come to us, we'll meet with them, we'll provide recommendations on what they can do to lessen the effect on wildlife. Then when they go for permitting to the county, they have to show that they consulted with us, and they also have to describe how they're going to address the concerns that we brought up related to the project. And then the bill says that the county has to consider those wildlife recommendations to the permitting process. So hopefully we can be more thoughtful about how these projects happen. But yeah, we definitely can't deny or approve anything based on this legislation.
Right. No, I appreciate the intent. I just am pretty deeply embedded into local land
Right.
use and it's interesting. Okay.
So I got a question kind of piggybacking off Trish's. So if I come to you and I want to put in a 30,000 acre solar field or whatever, and you give some recommendations to me, and then I go to the local county commission or whatever, to the local planning board, and they say, okay, well, they said that the DWR said you have to do this to mitigate wildlife. If I tell them that was great to hear, but I'm not going to, there is no rule where the planning commission has to make any changes. So this is literally just it's the DWR showing up and saying, you're taking out 30,000 acres of wintering ground. We need to offset that somehow. And they say, yeah, that's too bad. And then that's it.
Yeah, so I guess the benefit that I see is at least we discuss those impacts, and then the county will be aware of it when they're making that decision on whether it's worth it to do that land use, or maybe we shouldn't, or maybe we should reduce it. So yeah, and if the projects are just going through, like if they're just completely ignoring all the wildlife recommendations, that might have ramifications in the future too. The legislature might jump in and create more laws and restrictions on what's happening.
But my solar farm would still be built, right?
Right. Your farm will still be built. Yeah.
So I got a question with this. Is the division envisioning, when you're talking about bringing up the wildlife concerns, are you thinking more like, hey, we think these projects will impact wildlife in these ways, and is that where it ends? Or does this discussion get to go a little bit further where it says, we think wildlife will be impacted in these ways, and we think it could be mitigated by doing X, Y, or Z? What are we envisioning?
Yeah, the second one they suggested, that's how it happens. So
Okay.
with solar, the impacts are pretty big on wildlife because they have a perimeter fence around the whole project. And so that excludes any of our larger animals from ever using that area again. And so if the project's going to be located on a winter range where we have lots of deer, our recommendation might be, hey, can you find another location for this? Can we move it? If the project's going in a migration corridor, I might say, hey, can you break the project into 2 or 3 pieces and put some movement corridors through the project so we can still get animals through that area? So there's still some things that we can do to, and not all of them result in the project not happening, right? So, yeah.
So is a mitigation option financial restitution so that the division's able to do a habitat project
Yeah.
somewhere else? Is that an option?
That's a really good question. So our management plans for deer and elk recommend a voluntary mitigation ratio of 4 to 1. So for every 1 acre that's impacted or lost, we're recommending that they improve 4 acres of habitat. And we can do calculations and recommend what that amount would be depending on how big their project is. Yeah.
And sorry, then I'm going to turn to people who are actually involved with. So Trish, if Division of Wildlife sends up a recommendation to the county and says, hey, we think that they should thin 4 to 1 winter range on junipers, do you guys have any teeth to make that happen?
No, I mean, unless it's what's called a conditional use permit, you've probably heard of them, CUPs. CUPs come with conditions, right? that would mitigate the impacts of their development. So maybe that is what solar farms are. Maybe they are CUPs. And then I could see that happening. But again, the state, I mean, they are trying to take away local land use authority to a certain extent, but they're not the local land use authority, right? It's either the county or the city. So unless it's in their land use code,
Yeah, in their code.
right? But maybe that's where this is eventually going, right?
Sure.
Like right now, it's kind of a best practice, and then it will evolve into the state asking us to change our land use code.
Okay.
To take into what, and I would love that, because believe me, most developments I bring up wildlife, at least right now, I'm like, whatever.
Sure, and then at least here you're getting a state agency to give you a voice.
Yeah, I like it.
concerns instead of just maybe one person on a board.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like it. I do like it.
So I will say just real quick that we recently made a mitigation recommendation for 4-1 on a fairly large solar project. And that the amount was large that we said that that mitigation would be. And the county agreed with us, and the developer said, this is unrealistic. We don't think the division should be asking for this much money. And the county said, yeah, we think it's appropriate given the impacts. So, yeah.
So does House Bill 16 or House Bill 412 keep you guys from having any teeth with this rule you create?
I'm not sure. I know.
Like right now, as it reads to me, the rule that is being put in front of us, there is no, like, you can make this recommendation, and then if it goes to a county commission that really wants to see this project, they don't have to offset any problems to wildlife. I'm wondering if there's anything in House Bill 16 or House Bill 412 that negates you guys from having any, like, decision-making ability to say that if you do this large of a facility, we have to negate the negative effects to migratory birds in this way, the negative effects to wintering deer and elk, the negative effects to nesting bald eagles, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a layered question. So if the project is impacting threatened or endangered species, then the Fish and Wildlife Service will be involved in that and dictating what the mitigation will be required for those species. Yeah, I think what this will do is make sure that everybody's aware of the impacts that are happening, right? So now the citizens of the counties will see the recommendations that were made and kind of better understand the impacts. And if the projects are moving forward without addressing any of the impacts, and maybe the county can elect different folks on their planning commissions and county commissions, right?
I understand that, and that it might be this is my fault. I wish there was an attached, House Bill 16 and House Bill 412 were attached to this RAC packet, so we could get a baseline for what was put through the legislature, and then what is allowable under the rules that you're being asked to create under House Bill 412, and what is not allowable. And that I can put that on myself. I didn't look that up before, and that was the question I'm asking you, is what those laws have written, what the legislature passed, and is there an ability for you to have some sort of decision-making when you create this rule, or did they take that away from the DWR?
They didn't give us the decision-making authority on approving or denying projects, but I appreciate your feedback. We should have included those bills in the RAC packet.
Next year, let's add data centers to this.
Yeah, right.
So right now it is all renewable. I thought it was kind of anything that may has a huge impact on those lands of any sort. But you're right, it says just renewable energy. So which yeah, you have a very good point. Seriously.
Is there a reason it can't be expanded to other types of development?
So sorry, I keep bumping this. We do work on all kinds of projects with folks. So developers will come to us and talk to us. Sometimes we find out about projects through the RDCC database. And so that's a place where people post projects that are happening on public lands. And so we keep tabs on that, and we'll work with people on projects that are happening. So we're working on all kinds of projects, even though they're not required to consult with us.
Any other comments from the RAC? All right, anybody have a motion?
I move that we approve the division's recommendation on this rule.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor? And Jake
Yes.
and Justin. We're still going to call it unanimous. You can keep tally on which ones he voted.
Okay.
All right. Okay, on to the next one. White sturgeon, introduction and regulations. And I think we have Craig Walker online.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Just to recap for you all, you had an opportunity to view a presentation that outlines the proposed introduction of white sturgeon into two waters in Utah. That's Grantsville Reservoir in Tooele County and Hobbs Reservoir in Davis County. We're seeking board approval for catch and release regulation for white sturgeon in both of those waters. And just want to let you know that that proposed introduction is a follow through on what I presented last year during our informational presentation regarding angler opportunity and our effort to increase angler opportunity statewide.
All right, any questions from the RAC for Craig?
Since if that's okay.
Yep,
Sorry.
have at it, Trish.
Sorry. So I just want to just firm this up. This would be a non-native species to Utah.
That's
And
correct.
And this is a species, I lived in Washington State. There was sturgeon on the Columbia River.
Yep.
Big river, and it goes out into the ocean. So this is a species that goes into marine environments and then freshwater environments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you said they can adapt to just freshwater.
They can adapt to freshwater environments. They're not going to achieve the sizes that you see when they're anadromous, when they're moving between marine and freshwater environments.
Okay, good. And then would you agree that they could have impacts on native fisheries?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when we look at a map of Utah, we're kind of relegated to managing with non-native species or introducing new non-native species in probably about a third of Utah. We're not able to put those species into recovery program areas, namely the Upper Colorado Recovery Program area, Lower Colorado area in San Juan, and also in the Virgin River Recovery Program area. That's why when we put this out to our regional managers and we said we want to be able to do this safely, we want to mitigate escapement risk, and we want to still be able to study them as a tool that we can potentially put in our toolbox for using in those safe areas of the state. We only got responses from two regions, and that was the central region and the northern region, both of which are outside of those areas I described.
And then the last question is, I did just a little bit of research, and it said, they're really susceptible to contaminant accumulation, to just, environmental sensitivities. And I just wonder if, reservoirs are the best place for them. It seems like, that especially, we'll talk about water resources here in a minute, but it just seems like they'd be really susceptible in these reservoirs right now, I would say, are in jeopardy. And I don't know, I'm concerned about putting a lot of resources into something that I understand is experimental, but I don't know.
Right. I mean, to be honest and completely forthcoming, this was not on the top of our list of species to experiment with. We're more in the mindset of looking at species like saweye that are a sterile analog for walleye and do better in riverine systems. However, this opportunity presented itself through a conservation partner and a grower in Utah. And it is an opportunity for us to potentially put them in waters where they won't do any harm. And we can see what they're going to do. Yeah, I fully understand that they are not going to be in their optimal habitats and going to be thriving. But there's a potential for them to actually grow and provide people with, again, a diversity that they don't currently have, specifically at these two water bodies, which is what the anglers wanted coming out of our survey and what I presented last year. They're looking for diversity in their fisheries. And at the same time, you know, achieve lengths that might rival some of the trout that are in those water bodies currently. So if we can get a little bit of enjoyment out of these fish by having a young angler catch them, experience something different, release them, and maybe start to wrap their minds around exploring other fisheries in the native range for white sturgeon even, that's a win for us, really.
Anybody else? Looks like we do have one comment. Come on up. Let me see if I can guess who it is. Yeah.
All right, we're real good now. I'm starting to get a little bit of a complex, man. Everybody left. No, we are sportsmen for fish and wildlife, and so we are the partner in this. It was excited to be a part of it. Ken Strong is a guy that really handles all our fisheries, and we're pleased with the division being open to this idea. As it was stated, it is a local grower that is providing the fish for us, and one of the reservoirs that's or ponds that's they're being put in is a pond that I grew up fishing as a young kid. So it's exciting. And the neat thing about it, they only take about 25 years to get to maturity. So we'll all be around to take care of, you know, participate that. But no, SFW is excited. As it was stated earlier too, we like the idea of thinking out of the box and getting diversity and different things. And so we hope that the division will continue to have an open mind and look at some of these other species, bring them in the state. Utah already has one of the greatest fisheries around. Let's keep it that way. So we support this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Troy. Any online comments? All right, comments from the RAC. Yeah, go ahead, Trish.
Sorry that I'm flapping my gums so
Hey,
much tonight.
this is
I'm
great.
sorry.
We're happy you're doing it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not a big proponent of this. One, I'm not a big proponent of introduction of non-native species, period, for a lot of reasons. But these are cool fish. Like I have seen them and they're cool fish. I just don't think this is the best place for them. I think our reservoirs are in deep trouble. We just dumped 1 million acre feet. Is that correct? Is that the correct number out of Flaming Gorge? And so to me, it's a little scary to like put them into some reservoirs and go, okay, we'll see how they do. What if we have to drain those reservoirs? I mean, then, you know, so again, I think we put a lot of time and effort into introducing a fish that, you know, that's just my opinion.
This is a part of my career that I never thought I'd be in, where we'd be talking about managing with white sturgeon in Utah. But we're also thinking about managing with a wider array of species across the board. And that is because of the point that you mentioned, Tricia. It's a changing landscape, and we're seeing changes in our reservoirs, and we need to be able to assess what might work and what might not work so we can at least maintain some angling opportunity moving forward in these fisheries. You know, if trout isn't a thing, we've got to have that backup.
Yeah.
And we've got to understand what those backups can do regarding performance and providing benefit to anglers. And this is just a way for us to do that, while at the same time providing some short-term, hopefully, enjoyment at these two water bodies.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have different comments. I came from an area that I felt had a lot more diversity when it came to fishing than Utah did. And I loved that diversity, and then moved to Utah and was like, how many planter rainbow trout can I catch? And I love the way the DWR has kind of moved into this more diversity of fisheries, more warm water species coming in. I heard on the last RAC meeting, we might be narrowing that scope to where we're only allowed to put native fish in, and we can bring more species to a wider array of fisheries. I think that's an awesome stroke. I think diversity is great when it comes to fishing. And I'm excited to see white sturgeon is a giant change. And obviously, like Trish said, it is a species that it takes a long time to develop, even in areas like the Great Lakes or the Columbia. There's heavy restrictions on them because of the age and their ability to reproduce. But just reaching that far to grab that kind of diversity, I think shows how far we've come from just rote knowing every reservoir if it's got a separate species other than rainbow or cutthroat trout. So awesome. Kudos to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. And I'm looking forward to, just as a preview of what's to come in the September RACs when we bring forward a regulation proposal. We're suggesting that we actually sportify some of the native species in the state for catch and release fishing opportunities. Really, they're fish that we as biologists get to interact with on a regular basis and appreciate. The general public, the general angling public doesn't get to appreciate those fish and the systems that they occupy. And it would be really nice for somebody to tack into, name the species, whether that's a flannelmouth sucker or whatever it is that, I've caught incidentally in my career on a hook and line. And they've given me a tussle in the Green River when I was out there fishing with the kids for little bitty catfish. So it's an exciting time. At the same time, it's a challenging time. We're looking forward to it.
I'm a strong believer, once you give sportsmen a value for these fishing species, you're going to see people that learn to enjoy them so much. You're going to see more money funneled into saving those species.
Absolutely. And the systems that they occupy.
Any more comments? Okay, if not, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor, raise your hand. And let's go to Jake.
Yes.
And Justin, if you're on. And any opposed? Trish, okay. Anything you'd like to state other than what you've already mentioned?
I think I stated it. I'm just not a big proponent of non-native species, and I'm concerned about our reservoir resources right now. So yeah, I think I stated it fairly clearly. I'm used to being a dissenting vote. This is my world.
Hey, not too bad tonight. So I think that motion passed 6-1. Okay. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Does anybody give me a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, done deal. Meeting over.
Thank you all. Have a great night.